Welcome back to the channel. I'm EasyB40. Today we are going to go over the weapon ranking series version of the Black Ops 3 weapon ranking. I had some people that asked me about this, if we were going to do this again, and a lot of you did want it, so we are going to do it again. Just so everyone knows, just beforehand, I made a weapon ranking series info update video not too long ago. I do recommend checking that out if you do enjoy this series, because I do go over a few things in that video that talk about some of the stuff in this whole series. With all the research that I've been doing, there was a couple changes I ended up making, and I think you guys would like to listen to that. It's only like 20 minutes long. If you want to listen to that, you don't even have to watch it. Anyways, let's not waste any time. Let's just get straight into the criteria. Number one, we are primarily going over the pack-a-punch versions of these weapons. Number two, we are not including double pack-a-punch of any kind. Number three, we are not including double tap of any kind because not every game has double tap 2.0. Number four, attachments are banned unless they come with the weapon by default. So if you get the weapon and it has a couple of attachments on it, that's fine, but you're not allowed to use a weapon and customize attachments for it. Number five, some guns may be disqualified if they fit into an abnormal category or if they do not have a pack-a-punch variant. And also in the abnormal category, it's like the explosive weapons, guns that don't shoot regular bullets, stuff like that. So we're only going over weapons that shoot regular bullets when they are upgraded. Number six, performance in the higher rounds is primarily what we're looking at. Some other factors taken into consideration include damage, mainly to the head, ammo, rate of fire, and you're going to combine damage and ammo into total efficiency for the advanced analytic, as well as damage per second, with damage and rate of fire turning into damage per second, obviously, and we're really going to be looking into that. Penetration and collateral damage is also a factor that I didn't talk about before. I do take into consideration. I just completely forgot to freaking list it whenever I made this criteria. Mobility, reload speed, recoil, accuracy, and then ability to save you and ability to earn points is kind of a bonus thing. Number seven, wall weapons do not give any type of advantage unless two guns are similar and one of them is a wall weapon. We are looking at the better performing weapon, not the more convenient weapon. Number eight, all wonder weapons and special weapons are not allowed for this list. Number nine, we are looking primarily at this from a solo perspective and not from a co-op perspective. However, it does matter a little bit, just not as much as a solo perspective. Now, going over the banned weapons of today, the list of banned weapons includes the MR6, the Bloodhound, the M1911, the Mauser, the XM53, the L4 Siege, the NX Shadowclaw, the Rifty 9, and the Banshee. These are non-bullet weapons. We are mainly looking at bullet weapons for this series, and because of that, these weapons will be in a later video down the line talking about them in their specific categories. So because of that, we're not going to include them in this series in particular. One thing I will say about this list compared to the original Black Ops 3 ranking that I did as my first Call of Duty video, this list is without the attachments and without double tap, as you know. A lot of these weapons got exposed for this list. One thing about us Black Ops 3 players is that we are so used to using double tap, we're so used to having all of our attachments with fast mags and rapid fire and all that kind of stuff. Without rapid fire and without not even the damage of the double tap, but without that extra bit of rate of fire from the double tap, you're going to find a lot of these weapons just aren't going to shoot nearly as quickly. The effectiveness is going to fall off much, much quicker. And a lot of these weapons just aren't quite as good as originally thought of because it's lacking double tap and attachments. So just so you're aware, just be ready, because there are some spots in this list that might seem a little bit weird, but once you test them out, once you see just how they are without the attachments and under this specific criteria, you'll understand exactly why they are where they are. All right, without further ado, let's just hop into the list, man. Coming in at last place at number 41, this is the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh is easily the worst bullet weapon in Black Ops 3 Zombies. It's the least efficient weapon in the game, and it's got one of the lowest DPSs in BO3 Zombies. Compared to BO1 and BO2 Zombies, it's really not that bad of a weapon. It wouldn't be the worst gun in those games, but in BO3, the standard is much higher for weapons, and it doesn't really have much of a chance outside of last place. At number 40, this is going to be the Kuda. This is actually one of my personal favorite weapons in BO3, but unfortunately, it's just not favored by the analytics. The damage is too low, and the ammo and the rate of fire are nothing special. Its base pack-a-punch version just isn't that effective. I use this a lot with Deadwire, but when you take Deadwire off of that and just use its base version, it's really not that effective. At number 39, this is going to be the MP40. The MP40 is very similar to the Kuda, but you're essentially just trading out the rate of fire with a higher damage. MP40 also features a slower rate of fire compared to its original versions from World at War, BO1, and BO2. It's just not going to cut it when it comes to BO3. It's just not going to kill quick enough. Number 38, this is going to be the VMP. This features a little bit of a higher DPS, and it's a little bit higher in the efficiency department. It still does lack a little bit from being a good weapon, but it is a step above the ones I've already said. Number 37, I have the LCAR-9. It's a great point weapon when unpack-punched, but when pack-punched, the ammo is just way too low, and it has too high of recoil. The damage is really good, though, rivaling some of the assault rifles. It ranks higher than the SMGs because the DPS is much higher than the other SMGs, and even though the efficiency rating is a little bit lower, I still would prefer an LCAR over these other weapons when pack-punched. Alright, number 36, this one's going to be a weird one, because this is the most inconsistent weapon I've ever tested in this entire series. This is the RK5. But the reason this is so weird is because the one-shot headshot capabilities are just super inconsistent. Between rounds 14 and 21, the one-shot capability is inconsistent. By the way, this is headshots. Tests for one-shot capabilities with the RK5 were ran a total of 9 times. Usually it takes me once or twice. 4 of them were on Horizon Direct, 3 of them were on Revelations, 1 of them was on Ascension, and 1 was on Origins. It got to the point where I just used alchemical antithesis to get 1 bullet to see if it was just a burst thing, and still yet the results were inconclusive. Headshot damage should be anywhere between about 1,530 damage to about 3,000 damage, but at the end of the day, I can't give you an accurate number on this one. It's just way too inconsistent for me to give you an accurate number. Results were inconclusive. I don't really recommend pack-punching this gun as well as the guns below it. All of them just aren't productive enough to be effective in those higher rounds whenever they're pack-punched, unless you're putting dead wire or something like that on them. But we're just going over the base pack-punch versions, and when it comes to that, they're not going to be effective enough. Number 35, I have the Argus. And while the Argus is a little bit underrated, it does take place on a game with some of the greatest shotguns in zombies history, which is why it's hated so much. However, when it comes to shotguns in older games, it actually is quite effective. It has a good amount of damage, and it's got a good amount of ammo as well. It's a slug shotgun, so it is a little bit funky, but I mean, compared to the KSG from Bo2, people love that gun, and they're both really similar, but the difference is Bo2 actually had weaker shotguns, so in Bo2, the KSG was really liked, while the Argus was not because it's in Bo3. Although it's not really my type of weapon, it still can be effective when used properly. Number 34, I have the Shiva. While it is one of the worst weapons when unpack-punched, it actually isn't the worst thing when you pack-punch it. It has a decent headshot damage and an alright ammo supply. What makes the Shiva rank so much lower, though, is the rate of fire. The rate of fire is just way too slow, and it results in the DPS being well below the average, even with a good damage amount. It's not the worst thing in the world. Again, it's alright when pack-punched, but there are better options out there. Number 33, this is going to be the AK-74U. It's a moderate submachine gun, just doesn't really have many weaknesses, but not many strong suits either. It's not going to stand out among the other SMGs in any way. It's got a little bit more ammo than its original counterparts in Bo1 and 2, but it's still not anything special. There's nothing really bad I can say about the AK-74U. It's just kind of a mediocre weapon. It's okay, but nothing special. Number 32, I have the HG40. This is an improved version of the MP40, having higher damage and ammo. It is going to give you a few more kills overall. However, the rate of fire is still very low, and it's going to be the reason why it's this low on the list. Even though the ammo and damage are really high, it's very difficult to rank submachine guns high whenever they don't have a good rate of fire, and the HG40 falls into that category. Number 31, I have the M8A7. While it's a very useful weapon at times, it loses some of the effectiveness when you use it without attachments and without double tap. The burst delay is also quite bad, and it forces the M8 to have a low DPS as a result. Along with that, the damage just isn't that great, and it's why it ranks this low on the list. Number 30, I have the Vesper. The Vesper is a really quick SMG with a really high damage per second, featuring a DPS of 18,900. However, context matters, and when it comes to the Vesper, you have to understand the recoil is terrible. And a lot of times that results in either shots that miss the head or shots that miss everything completely. It has great potential, don't get me wrong, but the flaws are just way too big for me to put any higher on the list. Number 29, I have the Bootlegger. This is similar to the AK-74U. There's nothing really wrong with the Bootlegger. It's got good damage and it just kind of does everything decently. However, it's just not as effective as a lot of these other weapons ahead of it. It is a wall weapon on Shadows of Evil and Verrucht, but it's just way too expensive to justify purchasing, especially when there are other weapons that are easier to obtain that perform at a higher rate. Again, not a bad weapon, just plenty of other better weapons out there. Number 28, I have the Razorback. The Razorback is another all-around SMG. This one's exclusive to Zetsubo no Shima, so there's not a lot of opportunity to use it, especially since it's not a wall weapon. However, it is a fun weapon to use, and it's very easy to hit headshots with, but unfortunately the fall off of the Razorback is very, very quick. By the time you hit the early 20s, you're going to need a new weapon. It's pretty easy to hit headshots in the earlier rounds with this thing, because it is a very accurate submachine gun. It has little recoil, but overall, it's still not going to be nearly as effective as a lot of these other weapons. Number 27, I have the Weevil. Performance-wise, this is one of the better SMGs for sure. It has a great amount of ammo, and the damage is well above the average for an SMG. The recoil for this thing is actually really good. There's not much recoil at all for this, and the rate of fire is decent for an SMG. The Weevil doesn't really have any drawbacks other than collateral damage, of course, and that's going to be the main reason why this isn't as high on the list. It's definitely one of the best SMGs that Bo3 has to offer, though. Moving on to number 26, this is going to be the SVG-100. This is a bolt-action sniper rifle with one of the highest headshot damages in zombies. It is a very powerful weapon, but I will say there are a couple drawbacks. The SVG has a really slow rate of fire. It has an abnormal scope. It's just a little bit clunkier to use when you use it. I will say for snipers, whenever I do rank snipers, I primarily base it off of if the player is moderately good with a sniper. If you're not very good with a sniper rifle, I don't recommend this weapon at all. However, if you are good at sniping, you could honestly argue for this to be even higher on the list. Me, personally, I'm alright at sniping, but I'm just not a fan of super slow killing weapons when it comes to zombies, and the SVG is definitely one of those. Not a bad weapon at all, but it will definitely be more effective past round 30 compared to all of the other weapons I've said so far. Number 25 and number 24, we have our first verses of the video. This is going to be the HVK and the KN-44. Both of these are very similar analytically. The HVK shoots faster and it has more ammo, while the KN has more damage and is more stable. After a few tests comparing the two, I definitely believe that the KN is a little bit better. I just had such an easier time taking out zombies with the KN-44 compared to the HVK. Even though it has less ammo, it was much easier to conserve that ammo when compared to the HVK. The HVK's lack of damage definitely shows when using it, and it's a little bit harder to hit headshots with the HVK than the other assault rifles. While both weapons are fine, I think there's an argument for both weapons to be one above the other. I think the KN is the better option between the two, and I think most people would agree. Number 23, I have the STG-44. In the original video where I ranked the Bo3 weapons, I said that the KN was basically an STG, but just a little bit better. KN has better damage, KN has more ammo, KN can have attachments, all of that, right? However, after one-shot testing for the last month and a half, I realized that the KN actually has an incorrect headshot damage. Thanks, Wikipedia. And it's actually pretty much identical to the STG in terms of just overall headshot damage. Not only that, the rate of fire of the STG is definitely better than the KN's, meaning that the DPS on the STG is actually a bit better than the KN's. Both have similar efficiency, but the KN only has 10 more bullets, but the STG's rate of fire more than makes up for that, which is why it's going to be ranked higher than the KN-44. At number 22, I have the Peacekeeper Mark II. Exclusive to Revelations, the Peacekeeper Mark II is an alright assault rifle with a moderate damage per second and a lot of ammo. However, it just doesn't have that good of damage, which is why it ends up down here with the lower tier full auto ARs. It's not a bad weapon, but the lack of damage really hurts the argument for this to be placed any higher than it is. Number 21. This shocked me a little bit. This is going to be the M16. I was not expecting to put the M16 this high on the list, and I'm not a big fan of this M16 in Bo3. However, after a couple tests, this thing is actually pretty good. In terms of its analytics, it's actually above average in its efficiency and its damage per second. The burst, although I'm not a huge fan of the burst, it's an auto burst. When you hold down the trigger, it's going to be a continuous burst whenever you're just holding down the trigger rather than just needing to tap it constantly. It honestly is going to get you some good kills in those mid-20s. I was very impressed with the M16. It is a decent weapon, to be fair. Moving on to the top 20, we are going to go over what I believe to be easily the worst light machine gun in Black Ops 3 Zombies. This is the BRM. And to be honest with you, the BRM isn't even a bad LMG. It's just that in a game like Black Ops 3 that has just an absolutely nuts LMG roster, it's going to fall this low on the list because it just can't compare to those other LMGs. It is a good weapon, but here are some facts about the LMGs in Bo3. For the BRM, it ranks last in the efficiency department for the LMGs. It ranks last in the damage per second in the LMG department. It ranks last in the damage department for LMGs, and it ranks second to last in the rate of fire for LMGs. The ammo is good. I mean, I'll give it that. It has great ammo. But the other light machine guns also have really good ammo as well. On top of that, they also have other features that make them really, really good. The BRM is a fine weapon. It's just the Bo3 LMGs are legit on some freaking steroids, and that's why it's just not going to be able to compete with the other ones. Number 19, I'm going to have the M1927. This is going to be one of the more underrated weapons. The M1927 has incredible statistics, and overall, to be honest, the analytics recommend that I put this weapon even higher than it is. However, with it being an SMG, the collateral damage isn't going to be very high, so it is going to drop a few spots, unfortunately. Although, I gotta say, you guys have to give this weapon some credit. The fact that this is not considered to be the better weapon compared to the Bo2 counterpart is actually nuts. It's so funny because the Bo2 version, I ranked super low on that list because that weapon just is super weak. It doesn't do much at all. It's extremely overrated. And then we get to this version, which is extremely underrated and performs at a much higher level. Oh, and Bo4 also has a Tommy gun, so that's going to be fun to cover when we get to the Bo4 ranking. Number 18, this is going to be the Man-O-War. After I made my first Black Ops 3 ranking last summer, I had a couple of comments telling me I need to rank this higher. After further testing and research, nah. The issue with the Man-O-War is the damage per second falls short compared to the other assault rifles. It's very similar to the HVK and the KN-44 actually with its DPS, but even with its high efficiency, it's not enough to justify ranking it with the top tier full auto ARs because the efficiency of those weapons are just slightly less and they have a significantly better DPS than the Man-O-War. Still a good weapon though, it needs a better rate of fire. At number 17, I have the 48 Dredge. The 48 Dredge is one of the most unique weapons in Bo3. It has the highest ammo count in Bo3 Zombies, having a total of 840 total rounds. The Dredge is a 6-round burst auto LMG. Unfortunately, without double tap and rapid fire, the delay is going to impact the Dredge in a big-time negative way. Even though the rate of fire is quite good, that delay is going to halt your production when it comes to getting zombies out of your way. While it may not seem like a big deal, the issues become more apparent the further you get into the game. If this was fully auto and it just kept the same RPM as it has right now, this weapon would have been in the top 10 for sure. It has a lot of potential, but with how close this area is with ranking weapons, it ends up getting a lower rank spot that was previously anticipated. We're in the area now where all of these weapons are really, really good and they have very little flaws. So even one major flaw is going to drop you a few spots, and the 48 Dredge is one of those. At number 16, this is where things get a little bit tricky. This is going to be the KRM. Give me a sec to explain why I have the KRM so low on the list. It is an incredible weapon. I want to start with that. It is one of the most used weapons in Bo3 regardless of what you are doing. Whether you're doing high rounds, Easter eggs, casual games, killing boss zombies, you name it, the KRM is going to be useful. And the reason for this is because it's a wall weapon for 750 points. One of the biggest reasons why people love the KRM is because of its ability to take out boss zombies. And it is probably a top 3 weapon when it comes to killing boss zombies. Probably number 2 or 3, not quite number 1, but it is definitely up there. Now, look, I love the KRM, and I've used this thing hundreds of times. But the main reason this weapon is so popular is because it's a wall weapon. Because when it's not a wall weapon, which it isn't on some of the maps, it's never used. The ammo count is just too low, and in general with shotguns, they kind of got screwed over in this list because without double tap and rapid fire, the effectiveness is going to drop off dramatically. Now, some of you are going to say, well, because it's a wall weapon, it should be ranked higher. I want to clearly specify, wall weapon bonuses are not handed out because it's too subjective. Every one of you watching this video right now give out different bonuses to wall weapons. And so because of that, I just decided what I'm going to do is I am just going to prioritize the pure performance of these weapons, regardless whether it's a box or a wall weapon. And when it comes to comparing these weapons, I'm just going to tell you the performance of these weapons. And if you think this should get a bonus for having a wall buy, that's up to you. But for me personally, I'm just going off of the performance of these weapons. And performance-wise, this is the number 16 spot. At number 15, I have the PBSH. This is the best submachine gun in the game, and I think it's not even close. While I do enjoy the PBSH, I think it suffers for only being on Gorgon Crovy in terms of pack-a-punch maps. The reason I say this is because Gorgon is a map that doesn't favor close quarters combat. You've got to deal with Manglers, you've got to deal with Valkyries, neither of which the PBSH is good for. And on top of that, you've got to deal with electric zombies, which will stun you if you kill them up close. And then you've got to deal with fire zombies, which will blow you up if you kill them up close. While it fits the setting of Garage being in Stalingrad, it doesn't really fit the gameplay design very well, and it's kind of unfortunate. However, for the weapon itself, it has an incredible rate of fire, and it's got good damage for a submachine gun. It's got great ammo, and it's just all around a wonderful SMG. At this point, though, it's really hard to give a high placement to a submachine gun because without good collateral damage, it's very, very difficult to put this any higher, which is why it's not in the top 10. Originally it was, but without collateral damage, it's going to fall quite a bit, to be honest with you. Alrighty, for number 14, 13, and 12, I would like to go over the shotguns. Oh, don't worry, this isn't going to be a freaking 30-minute rant like I did last time, don't you worry. I'm just going to say straight up, at 14, we're going to have the Marshals here. My main issue with the Marshal is, why is this only on Zets? No, but seriously, I think I'm going to start by saying this weapon is very, very powerful, but it's also very weird. First off, don't trust wiki stats on this weapon. There are some straight up false stats on there claiming some crap about the Marshal having a headshot damage so high that it could one-shot into the late 30s. That ain't freaking true at all. My research supports a headshot damage of around 5,300 to 5,800. For this video, we will give it the 5,800 headshot damage. Also, a reminder that since this weapon shoots 2 shots at once, that 242 total ammo turns into 121 ammo. Also, something that isn't contextualized, it has a 95% mobility rating, and I'm not sure why, but when I was testing this, I recognized that the mobility was a little bit more like an AR than it was like the SMG that I was holding. So because of that, I decided to test it out, and sure enough, it was 95% mobile compared to the SMGs, which are 100% mobile. This is one of the safest weapons to use in zombies for sure. Having 2 shotgun pistols and having a damage per second that is literally higher than any other bullet weapon in Bo3 zombies. Having an approximate DPS of 69,600, which is absolutely disgusting. But again, context matters, and I highly doubt you'll reach that number of DPS with how inconsistent the Marshals are. Combine that with the fact that you have to reload after about half a second, and the fact that they're dual-wield and quite inaccurate at times, you're usually not going to reach that DPS, but regardless, it's a very, very safe weapon. Overall, this is a very good weapon for killing thrashers and getting zombies out of the way, but if you want a weapon that's going to kill a larger amount of zombies, then I recommend using an assault rifle or LMG of some kind. Number 13 and number 12, these are the final 2 shotguns in this list. This is going to be the Haymaker and the Brecci. For the Haymaker, let's start with this. It's very easy to use, and it's very good for when you trap yourself in corners. However, if you're a more experienced player, I think you'll find more use out of the 205 Brecci, specifically on maps that feature a boss zombie. The biggest difference between the Haymaker and the Brecci is the Brecci is far superior when killing boss zombies, especially the Panzers, and this is specifically in the high rounds. In the earlier rounds, the Haymaker is fine for killing boss zombies, but as you get further and further into the game, the Haymaker's drop-off point is just so freaking nuts that you're going to need a Brecci compared to the Haymaker. Analytically, the Brecci will get a few more kills, but the Haymaker will actually do a much better job at getting zombies out of the way, and it kills quicker, having a much better DPS than the Brecci. When comparing these two, I think it all depends on what map you're playing. If you're playing a map like Der Reisendrak, 100% use the Brecci over the Haymaker. However, if you're playing a map like Kino der Toten, I think the Haymaker might be a little bit better just because it'll get zombies out of the way easier, and there's no boss zombies on Kino. However, throughout my experiences with high rounding in Bo3, I have relied much more on the Brecci than the Haymaker, so overall, I do think that the Brecci deserves a higher spot than the Haymaker. The Haymaker is going to get the number 13 spot, while the Brecci is going to get the number 12 spot, but they're both incredible weapons, and I think it really just depends on what you're doing, but for the most part, I have found more usefulness out of the Brecci than the Haymaker. At number 11, this one shocked me too. This is going to be the Locust. So yeah, you remember whenever I talked about that moderate skill level with a sniper? Well, when it comes to using the Locust, this is definitely going to be easier than using the SVG. The Locust has 9,000 headshot damage, and it fires at a much quicker rate than the SVG. Not only that, the Locust is a more traditional sniper, so aiming in and hitting shots is going to feel much smoother. On top of this, the biggest difference between these two weapons is the body damage. And I usually don't care to go over body damage, I usually just care about headshot damage, but When it comes to snipers, it's not always easy aiming for the head. So obviously, whenever you hit body shots, you're not going to deal nearly as much damage as you usually would to the head. However, the biggest downside of the SVG and why it's ranked much lower, aside from all the other stuff I said about it, is the fact that it's the lowest body damage of any sniper in Bo3. Yeah, both snipers that are supposed to be the less powerful snipers actually do better body damage than the SVG, which doesn't really make any sense, but that's just how it is. The Locust actually has a really nuts body damage, having a ×7 multiplier when hitting body shots. So when you hit body shots with the Locust, this is going to hit for 6,300 body damage. So even if you're unable to hit a headshot, you're still not going to be disappointed with the results. The production rate is still going to be very, very high, even if you're missing headshots. And the collateral damage is also really good with the Locust, even with body shots. Each time I used the Locust in my test, I was impressed more and more the more I used it. 100% you can debate this being in the top 10, but I think with everything that I've compiled together, I think number 11 is probably the most fair spot for me to put it. All right, moving on to the top 10, we have the ICR, the highest ranking wall weapon in Black Ops 3 Zombies. It is the most accurate weapon in this game, and it makes headshots super, super easy to hit. It is an absolute laser beam. Not like literally. If it was literally a laser beam, then I have to ban it, but you know what I mean. Not only that, it's essentially got no weaknesses. The ammo and the rate of fire are a bit mid, but everything else about the weapon is just so incredible. I think the biggest reason why this is so much higher than a weapon like the Man of War is because the DPS is just so much higher, and combining that with the fact that the accuracy is just so much better, it makes it the much better weapon to get kills with. Number 9, I'm going to put the FFAR here. From a performance standpoint, this is an upgrade in the AR category compared to the ICR. It has higher ammo and higher rate of fire. The FFAR is going to be an effective weapon regardless of what map you're playing, but me personally, I do prefer the ICR, mainly because it's a wall buy, but also because of all the things the ICR has to offer compared to the FFAR. But with the analytics and with the tests that I've ran, I think it is more fair to put the FFAR a little bit higher than the ICR. It's just too good to pass up on. And I think the main reason why I have it ahead of the ICR, honestly, at the end of the day, was the analytics. Overall, it's a fantastic weapon. Highly recommend it. It is a bit weird at times because the recoil isn't quite as good as some of the other ARs, but it is still a really good weapon. Number 8, this is the best fully auto assault rifle in Black Ops 3 Zombies. That is the Galil. The Galil has an efficiency rating that is extremely elite compared to all other ARs. In terms of full auto ARs, it's the second highest in the efficiency department, only slightly behind the Man of War. And it also has the best damage per second of any fully automatic assault rifle in Bo3 Zombies. Combine that with the fact that by default it comes with a fast mag and a red dot sight. The Galil was already one of the best bets to begin with, but with that, it makes it much easier to choose this ahead of the other assault rifles. It's very comparable to its original counterparts. It's just got a couple of attachments on it now. It's funny too because everyone thought for some reason they nerfed the Galil in this game, but no, it's still an elite weapon in this game. Even in Black Ops 3 where the weapons are really good, it's still an incredible weapon to use. Very good weapon. I highly recommend it. Use it whenever you get the chance to. Number 7, 6, 5, and 4 are all on such a similar level as each other. But at the end of the day, I decided at number 7, this is going to be the Gorgon. One of the most underrated weapons in Zombies, period. The Gorgon is an efficient powerhouse that has an absolutely absurd production rate. It is the most efficient bullet weapon in this game. One of the most unique weapons of all time. However, even with its great damage, the slow rate of fire is going to drop its DPS rate to a rate that's similar to something like the KN-44 or the Man of War. And before you hit me with that, easy, it's too slow. It's got a 95% mobility, thank you very much. It's the same as the Marshals, it's the same as the ARs. Don't want to freaking hear that crap about mobility not being good enough. Just so I don't go on another freaking Gorgon rant and we're not here for 30 minutes talking about this weapon, here's a video explaining a bunch of stuff about the Gorgon. It's from my deep dive series where I dive into specific weapons and go into full detail regarding its pros and cons, and I highly recommend watching that. I think that you'll get a better understanding as to why the Gorgon is such a great weapon. At number 6, this is going to be the MG08. One of the best performing weapons in Black Ops 3. The MG08 is an excellent weapon that's only featured on Origins. It's got good damage, it's got a good rate of fire, it's got good ammo. However, with this top tier, it gets really, really nitpicky. Because all these weapons are so great, even the smallest details could drop a weapon 2 or 3 spots. And that's what it did for the MG08. The MG08 has the slowest mobility of any bullet weapon in this game, having what I believe to be an 88% mobility. For my test, it's somewhere between 87% and 90%, but most of my tests point toward 88%. Another downside is that the weapon just simply is not good at killing the Panzer on Origins, which I know the Origins Panzer is awful to deal with in the first place. How each gun deals with the Origins Panzer usually reflects on how good or bad it will be on other boss zombies on other maps. This does feature the highest DPS of any LMG and Bo3 zombies, while also being one of the most efficient weapons in the game. Comparing to its Bo2 counterpart, it lacks the bullet ricochet for some reason, and I'm not sure why. But one thing I will say better about the Bo3 MG08 is that there is just no freaking recoil on this weapon. The recoil for this weapon is non-existent. When you use this thing, it is a freaking laser beam. If this weapon had a higher mobility, similar to the other LMGs at 95%, I probably would have put this in the top 5, maybe even top 4. But unfortunately, with its lower mobility and also lack of ability to kill boss zombies, I had to drop it a couple spots. Number 5. The MX Grand. The MX Grand jumps to a top 5 spot surprisingly compared to the last ranking I did. However, if you've used this weapon, you probably know why. It's an amazing weapon to use, and it's going to kill lots of zombies. It's a semi-auto rifle that has a very high amount of damage, and also has a decent rate of fire for a semi-auto. And this could honestly go as high as even number 3. However, again with the nitpicking, the reload is unavailable as long as you have ammo in the magazine. So until your mag is out, you cannot reload with this thing, which can really be a hindrance at times in certain situations. But other than that, though, I can't really think of anything bad to say about the MX Grand. It's a really good weapon. At number 4, the RPK. Fun fact, this weapon was not added in until mid-2018, which was almost 3 years after the game released, and it was pretty much right before Bo4 launched. The RPK is a great weapon. However, I think the reason why it falls short of a top 3 is because the rate of fire is just slightly too slow and the ammo is slightly too low. One thing I'd like to address, some of you commented on how the RPK can actually take out the Origins Panzer much quicker since it was added in after the map released and therefore was not given a damage reduction when killing the Panzer. For the record, this is on Xbox, so all of this was tested on Xbox. Whenever I tested this, the RPK had similar results to the top tier weapons in this top 10. But when it came to killing the Panzers on both Origins and DE, it wasn't anything special. It wasn't anything different, super abnormal, to the point where I would just use this at all times if I got it. It's about the same thing as all of these other top tier weapons that are all decent at killing Panzers and whatnot. But no, I don't believe that it has an advantage in killing Panzers, except for the fact that it's just a good gun overall to kill them with, but nothing outlandish. Like I said, it's similar to other top tier weapons, but it's nothing that's going to stand out. Now, it could be different on PS4 or PC, but here the results on Xbox seem to be rather normal. Certainly better than the OG counterpart though, by a long shot. The OG RPK was not that good at all. This version is so much better. Overall though, highly recommend this weapon. Very, very good weapon. Okay, now for the top 3. I'd like to preface, the top 3 was extremely difficult. I thought about this top 3 for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. But I think it's mainly because the last 3 weapons are so different from each other. They all have something a little different to bring to the table. But overall, I think these are certainly 3 of the best weapons, not only in Bo3, but of all time. At our number 3 spot, this is the Dingo. The Dingo was built to kill zombies. Just straight up. It's basically the ultimate zombie killing weapon. And I say that because it has a ton of ammo, it's got great damage, it's got good rate of fire, solid mobility. There's no weakness with this weapon. Literally the only somewhat downside of it is the reload speed isn't that great. But really, it's not that bad either. I know the COD community doesn't really care for futuristic weapons, but honestly, correct me if I'm wrong, please. But I think the Dingo is probably the most respected futuristic weapon in all of COD history, for the simple fact that it's just such a helpful zombie weapon. I mean, it essentially has 0 weaknesses. And although I know some of you think this should be number 1, The reason it's not is because the effectiveness of the Dingo is going to fall off in the mid to late 30s, while the top two are going to be more effective going into the 40s. Personally, for me, not counting Deadwire or AATs, I have used this gun for sure more than any other weapon in Bo3. Just because it's so versatile and it's just so easy to use, and it's just insanely good. Compared to the RPK, it is slightly more efficient, not by much, just barely, and it has a little bit better DPS. And in my opinion, it is a little bit better with a recoil. And I also think it's slightly better for killing boss zombies. I think other than the shotguns, I think the Dingo is the best boss zombie killing weapon for regular bullet weapons. While they are on a very, very similar level, the pros for the Dingo compared to the RPK is not including attachments. So even if you do end up putting attachments on the Dingo, it's definitely going to be better. But even without the attachments, I still think the Dingo is the better weapon, just slightly. But overall, they are on a very similar tier as each other. Both are incredible weapons. Number 2, the Draken. The Draken is easily one of the best weapons of all time, no questions asked. Even with it being a sniper rifle, and I'm not a huge fan of sniper rifles, it's incredible. It has a very high damage. It has a solid rate of fire for a sniper rifle. It's good at the ammo department. In my first ranking ever, I said that the Draken was number 1, but I also said that it was definitely debatable, especially if you're taking into account the scoped version of the Draken. Because with the scope, it doesn't zoom out when you pack punch it, right? With no attachments, that scope is just a basic scope. You cannot have a variable zoom on that, which is something that's going to help the old sniper rifles like the Dragunov, the L96, the SVU. The Draken does not have that. It has the customization attachment. So without the customization options, you're stuck with a basic scope. And, well, here we are talking about no customization options. And to be honest, that ended up being the deciding factor between 1 and 2. Because with attachments, I would have put this number 1. The Draken with a scope is still incredible, but it's not going to be nearly as versatile since you're going to have a much trickier time killing zombies from a close distance. Usually with snipers, even if I'm not the biggest fan of them, I still have a tremendous amount of respect for them and what they are able to bring to the table. And in this situation, the Draken is one of the best snipers. It has an absurd efficiency rating, having the second highest efficiency in Bo3, as well as having the second highest DPS in Bo3. So, with analytics like this, how could it not be number 1? Well, it's definitely not like a bad take or anything to put it number 1. It definitely is deserving of the spot. But I also think there's another weapon out there that rivals even the Draken for the top spot in Bo3. All right, guys, at number 1, yeah, M14, baby. Woo! Let's go, M14 gang, yeah. Man, the starter weapon, you know, that semi-auto rifle, the early rounds. Yeah, that's such a cool weapon, man. Yep, totally. Yeah, number 1 spot. All right. Let's get into the real number 1 spot. Oh, wait. Oh, that M14. Oh. All right. So coming in at number 1, it actually is the M14. So right now, y'all probably got some questions. Well, how about we dive into the M14 a little bit? The M14 is an assault rifle. However, it's kind of a hybrid between an AR and a sniper. It has an absolutely disgusting headshot damage of nearly 5,000 damage, while having 224 ammo and a RPM of 400. For context, this no longer one-shots on round 26, while the Draken no longer one-shots on round 31. So the one-shot fall-off is a little bit different, but you also have to understand the M14 is an assault rifle, and it's rivaling the damage of the Draken in terms of one-shot capabilities, which is nuts. You also have to remember that the M14 has more ammo, and it's much, much easier to use since it not only doesn't have a scope, but it features a very quick aim-down sight speed, as well as having a foregrip and a laser sight, making the hip firing extremely easy for when you get trapped in corners and when you want to just kill zombies from a really close distance. Comparing the top 3 side by side analytically, starting with the Dingo, it has a 945,000 efficiency rating while having nearly 16,000 damage per second. The Draken has 1.2 million efficiency and has over 34,000 damage per second, which is nuts. It's very, very good. But even with these analytics, it's nowhere near far-fetched to debate that the Dingo is the better weapon compared to the Draken. Most of you, even here watching right now, I know most of you would say the Dingo is better than the Draken. I know what you guys prefer. Now, with those two out of the way, let's bring up the M14. with over 1.5 million efficiency and over 31,000 damage per second. Guys, this is an assault rifle with a quick aiming ability, a great hip firing ability. It's great up close. It's great from a distance. It's extremely versatile. Sure, the Draken has better analytics, and I'm big on stats. But again, context matters. And with the things that the M14 is capable of, it's very, very similar to the Draken. It's just miles easier to use. It's so much better for all other situations because it's just such a versatile weapon. It just has so many capabilities that Draken just does not have, especially without the attachments. So with all this taken into account, it starts to become clear why this #1 spot isn't so clear. Of the rankings I've done, this was easily the hardest choice for a #1 spot. You can really go either way, to be honest with you. I don't blame you. If it's the Draken, if it's the Dingo, the M14, all three of these weapons have a very good argument to be the #1 spot. But for a few extra bits as to why I put the M14 at #1, I thought about the maps in BO3. And I thought about every map except for the Unpack-a-Punch maps. So no Noct, no Varuk, no Shino. There's 11 maps. And of those 11 maps, if I was to choose the M14 or the Draken, on 10 of those, I would have chosen the M14 to use over the Draken. The one map I would have chose the Draken on over the M14 is the Giant. Granted, the M14 is not on the main Black Ops 3 maps, but hypothetically speaking, if I had that choice, that's where it would be. Both weapons are featured in Origins, which gave me the opportunity to see which one was better for taking out boss zombies. And while both weren't quite as good as the Dingo in taking out Panzers, the M14 was a little bit better than the Draken when killing the Panzer. While it did use slightly more ammo, from a percentage base, it actually used less. Because in terms of percentage based, the M14 used about 36% of its ammo to kill the Panzer, while the Draken used about 44% of its ammo to kill the Panzer. Not to mention, the M14 was killing the Panzer quicker because you can shoot it faster, and it was much easier to take it out because I didn't have to scope in with a freaking scope. But while analytically the Draken is superior, it's not an extreme range. It's not a huge difference compared to the M14 to the point where it's just way, way better. Both weapons have a similar fall off area in the game. Without double tap, they will both usually start to fall off in the early 40s. I think with all the features that the M14 has, I think there's plenty of justification for it to be ranked higher, but I want to hear your opinion on this, honestly, because this one was tough, man. I think this could go really either way, and I don't really blame you either way on this one. Also, sorry, Olympia gang, but this was not brought to you by the M14 gang. I just happen to know the difference between good and bad weapons. Thank you for watching this video. This took quite a while to do. It was a lot of fun going back to BO3 and playing the game in a much different format than what I'm used to, going without double tap and without double pack punch and all that. It's actually quite fun, and I actually recommend that you give it a try. This list is probably going to be a little bit different than what you expected because a lot of things were taken out, and I think if you play with this sort of format, you will understand why the list was the way it was, because there were some weapons like the KRM and some of the shotguns that just weren't ranked quite as high as originally thought. But I do recommend giving it a shot. That way you can kind of get a better understanding as to why they were ranked, how they were ranked. So obviously I have already started on the Black Ops 4 ranking. It will still probably be a while till that thing is out because, man, there's just no info on the internet at all, pretty much, for BO4 zombies. I've got to find headshot damages. I've got to find mobility ratings. I've got to find rate of fire, RPM ratings. I've got to find DPS ratings. I've got to find so much stuff, and it's going to take a while. So in the meantime, I do have other videos planned. I think the next video, I'm going to go over the mobilities in the zombie games. I think with mobility, a lot of misinformation is out there, especially with Wikipedia. Wikipedia has a lot of misinformation when it comes to mobility. So because of that, I think I'd like to make my own video with mobility because I want to make sure that people understand how good mobility is for certain weapons. So because of that, I think that's what the next video is going to end up being. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. I will talk to you guys later. See ya.